American fucking dream. What a fucking show.
The man takes a leap, crashing through the massive electric grid, but instead of an abyss below, he appears in the sky above the city. This is Paradise, an underground city with a lifelike sky that's actually a giant screen. 3 years ago, when Doomsday struck, the US president and 25,000 chosen Americans took shelter here. Just before tsunamis and nukes wiped out Earth's surface, the president used the nuclear football to input the blue key, disabling all electronic circuits worldwide. This allowed some humans on the surface to survive. After learning his wife is still alive, Xavier agrees to Samantha's deal. He tells Robinson that Samantha isn't the president's killer, but someone who snuck in from outside Paradise. To meet Samantha's demands, Xavier forces Robinson to disarm the Secret Service and release the hostage tycoons and officials.
What the fuck does she have on you?
My daughter.
With his daughter still in Samantha's custody, Xavier races to find the real killer. Back at the crime scene in the presidential mansion, he closes his eyes, trying to recall any missed clues. The bloodstained cigarette pack, with a string of numbers written on a cigarette inside, still puzzles him. Suddenly, his eyes land on a stack of music CDs near the sofa. He remembers the president brought back a CD on the night of his death, but played a different one. Sure enough, Xavier discovers an unusual CD containing the president's recorded message for his son.
I came down to the library to make you a mixtape. Bury a few national secrets while I'm here.
Xavier rushes there and notices each book has a 6-digit number. He suddenly recalls the numbers on the cigarette. He finds the corresponding book, and inside is the president's notebook. It details the survey team's encounters, the true state of the surface, and even instructions on how to leave Paradise. Xavier reels from the shock. When he opens his eyes again, Xavier realizes the librarian knocked him out. But the familiar face reminds Xavier of the man's true identity, the assassin who once tried to kill the president on the White House lawn. Xavier remembers him vividly, having nearly died by his gun. Faced with Xavier's confused look, a painful memory surfaces in the man's mind. 12 years ago, Trent worked as an engineering manager on the Paradise Underground City project. He led workers in blasting and excavating inside the Colorado mountains. As the project progressed, workers began experiencing health issues. The culprit was arsenic sulfide, a toxic sand abundant in the mountain. Trent immediately reported this to the chief engineer, demanding they stop work. The chief engineer reassured Trent he'd handle it and gave him time off. But when Trent returned to the site days later, his access card was deactivated. The chief engineer came clean. The project couldn't be stopped or delayed.
Sorry, it wasn't my call.
Why are my guys back in the hall?
They will wear masks and will work around it.
The bigwigs behind it were untouchable, and the project was crucial for humanity's future. Over the next few years, the workers Trent once supervised died one by one at the site. Enraged, he tried exposing the truth to the media, but no one listened. Through investigation, Trent discovered the Paradise Project was secretly backed by the president and his family. So, he directed all his hatred and anger toward the president. However, Xavier took the bullet meant for the president, and Trent failed to make the truth public. In prison, Trent learns that Adam, his closest worker friend, is terminally ill. He's devastated but helpless. Just when Trent thinks he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars, the Great Tsunami brings another twist to his life. As global panic spreads to the prison, inmates stage a mass riot. Before escaping, Trent grabs a police uniform from a dead officer. On the way to the Colorado mountains, the road is packed with vehicles of the elite seeking refuge. Posing as a cop, Trent questions a couple and learns they're librarians with access to the shelter. He lures them to a secluded hillside. To impersonate the librarian, Trent disguises himself based on the ID photo. Perhaps by fate, as he's leaving, he spots a woman about his age crying in her car. She's lamenting her unremarkable life, with no one caring about her even as the world ends.
You might be the only person in the world who's in the right place at the right time.
Trent, needing a woman to pose as the librarian's wife, invites her along. Together, they sneak into Paradise. Trent naturally becomes Paradise's head librarian. He plans to live quietly until the day the president comes to hide his notebook in the library. The faces of his dead co-workers flash in Trent's mind, and painful memories drive him to finish his unfinished revenge. That night, after Xavier's shift ends, Trent sneaks into the presidential mansion. He knocks out the unsuspecting president on the balcony and drags him inside. As Trent panics, the president regains consciousness and secretly writes Xavier's initial in blood on the cigarette pack. He then dies in the struggle with Trent. This is the truth Xavier has been desperately seeking. Trent grabs the president's notebook, ready to escape paradise using its instructions.
And whatever's left of the world deserves to know.
Xavier, tied to a pillar, can only watch helplessly as Trent leaves. Luckily, Robinson arrives just in time to free him, and they immediately dash towards Paradise's exit in pursuit of Trent. They finally corner him in the maintenance channels crisscrossing above the sky system. Looking down at the bustling city below, Trent feels a bitter irony. His co-workers sacrificed their lives building this place, only for the privilege to have luxurious homes after doomsday.
It's the American fucking dream. There are bodies scattered in the dirt down here. People need to know this place is nothing more than a grave site. Paradise. What a fucking joke.
Filled with resentment and grief, Trent chooses to die alongside his co-workers in the paradise they created. Xavier, armed with the answers he's found, comes to fulfill his deal with Samantha. However, when he demands she release his daughter, Samantha seems oddly flustered. It turns out Jane has somehow broken free from Samantha's control and, against orders, allegedly killed Xavier's daughter not long ago. Samantha, caught off guard by this news, is visibly nervous when facing Xavier.
God forgive me.
Realizing his daughter might be dead, Xavier, overcome with grief, suddenly draws his gun and shoots 2 bodyguards. Faced with a frenzied Xavier, Samantha is too terrified to speak.
What the fuck did you do?
A gunshot rings out, but it's not Xavier who pulled the trigger, it's Jane. It turns out Jane lied to Samantha. She never killed Presley. She lies, she just rescued Presley and sent her home, sending Xavier rushing back in excitement. In this way, Jane covers up her undercover status and her dirty deeds. If Xavier knew she killed Billy, he'd never let her off the hook.
He was gonna blow your brains out. But you're no use to me if you're dead. Long recovery ahead of you.
Reunited with his children, Xavier decides to leave Paradise and return to the surface to find his wife. Following the president's instructions, he reaches Paradise's exit and unlocks the door to the outside world. Xavier then boards Air Force One, which has been gathering dust. Unexpectedly, he's about to fulfill his pilot father's lifelong dream. As the massive iron doors slowly open, the first rays of sunlight in 3 years shine into Paradise.
I'm coming, baby.
This concludes the first season of Paradise, but it leaves several questions unanswered. Why didn't Jane kill Samantha, the only person who knows about her undercover identity? What is she planning to use Samantha for? With Samantha in a coma, how will the power dynamics shift among Paradise's leaderless upper echelons? Jeremy has revealed to the people that there are survivors on the surface. How will the government handle their desire to go out and search for loved ones? Will Jeremy take on the responsibility his father once shouldered and lead the people return to the surface?
And Jeremy, you don't like this world I built. Fix it.
She calls out.